Why doesn't grass grow in the winter? I'm already having withdrawals. What's up guys, Octane Restorations. Today I'm going to go over how to winterize your riding lawnmower. Now most small engines, the steps that you're going to take in the process is going to be the same. Granted, there are going to be differences with parts, maybe you got to drain the fuel tank on some of them, but this is the basic overview of how to winterize a riding lawnmower. This is the same thing that I do for my clients, and I'm going to show you that today. The goal of the fuel additives is just to keep the fuel fresh. Older fuel doesn't burn as well, and this helps counteract some of that. My favorite is Stable Marine, but I find that Stable works very well. You got to estimate how many gallons you have in here. I think I've got about 2 gallons in here, which isn't a lot. As you can see on the gauge, it's a quarter. Best practice would be to fill it up all the way, so that way the tank doesn't condensate. I know it seems counterintuitive to fill your gas tank up completely before winter, but if you fill it up completely before winter and you add the proper amount of fuel stabilizer, water won't be able to condensate on the inside of the tanks. It's not as big of a problem with plastic tanks, but especially if you have a machine with a metal tank, you're going to want to fill it up as full as you can. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. Like I said, I got about 2.5 gallons, so I'm just going to measure this according. So this says 1 ounce treats 2.5 gallons, so we're just going to do 1 ounce right here. Now, of course, if your tank is completely empty, and I mean completely, you don't really have to worry about this.
You see what I have to deal with daily?
So for most people, draining the carburetor is going to be the most daunting task. I mean, the word carburetor is pretty scary, right? But it's fairly easy. There's 2 different types of systems that can affect the way you drain your carburetor. You drain them the same way, but this machine right here, it's got a fuel pump. So the difference is we open up the valve on the carburetor, all the fuel is going to come out. So this system has a fuel pump because as you can see, the gas tank is pretty far away from the engine. So this one has a fuel pump right here. So this riding lawnmower is going to be the same way. If your mower is one like this Craftsman, where it's got a fuel tank right here, you see this is what we call a gravity fed system. The fuel line comes directly from the bottom of the tank and it travels into the carburetor. Now, if you undo this, like on the other one to drain the fuel is just going to keep coming out until you drain the fuel tank. So you have 2 options. You can either empty the fuel tank, you disconnect these lines, put a container underneath it, and then fuel will just drip into it. Or you can install an inline petcock. YouTube, please don't ban me. I'm not trying to make any innuendos. This is generally what it's called, a petcock. All it is a simple valve in here, a little quarter turn valve. That's closed. Inline is open. Installing these petcocks are pretty simple. You just find a good place in line and you splice it in. So you'd cut right here, connect one hose to this side, connect the other one to right here, put some hose clamps, and then you got a fuel shutoff for one of these. I do plan on making a video over this. It is super simple, super easy, and it really helps with the winterization process. So again, for these riding lawnmowers, you have 2 options. You can either drain the fuel tank and all the fuel out of it, so that way you can empty the carburetor, or you can install an inline petcock like this and shut your fuel off up to the point right here, and then you can properly drain your carburetor. If you're not very familiar with these types of stuff, look for something with a bowl on it that a fuel line goes to. As you can see, the fuel line comes in right here. This is the bowl where the fuel sits. It's in between our air box and the engine. It's what the throttle connects to. On the bottom of this is what's called an anti-after-fire solenoid, or a fuel shutoff solenoid. Normally you have 2 wires going to it. These wires kind of need rewired, but you just want to disconnect that so you can properly loosen this. You don't just want to keep twisting and twisting because you can break the wires. So again, most of the time you're going to have some thin wrenches, and this is just lefty loosey, righty tighty. You want to go left to loosen it, And whenever you open it, you should start getting fuel to come out. So as you can see, fuel's dripping here now. It's pretty hard to contain fuel from this area. What you can do is you can cut a water bottle in half, and sometimes you're able to jam it in there. But it's gasoline, it's going to evaporate pretty quickly. So unless you're in an enclosed area, you know, it's not that big of a deal just to let it drip and then it's gonna evaporate. I would recommend doing this outside though, because it will sneak up everything. But there's normally not a lot of fuel inside these carburetors. I mean, you can see the bowl, how little it is. So that's all the fuel that's going to be inside here. So at this point, there's nothing else draining. So we've gotten everything out of there, everything that's gonna gum up the carburetor, so you can tighten it up at this point. And sometimes this bowl may come off if you're not careful. So what I would recommend is really only cracking this till fuel starts to come out, because there is an O-ring up here that you might have to replace if you take off this bolt. So again, I would recommend just cracking this till fuel starts to come out, and then once it's done, I'd stop. Once the fuel's done draining, then just retighten it. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to pull the spark plugs from both cylinders, and we're going to do what's called fogging the cylinders. So what you want to do is you want to take your spark plugs out. So the theory of fogging cylinders is as metal heats up and warms and cools down, condensate develops on the surface of the metal. Now that goes for inside your engine as well. So the theory behind fogging the cylinders is you don't want water inside your engine, because of course water inside an engine leads to rust, and you don't want rust in your engine. What fogging the cylinders does is you remove the spark plug and you spray a fogging solution, which in my case is going to be WD-40, inside the cylinder. WD-40 originally was built for water displacing. That's what the WD means, water displacement 40. It's the 40th formula. So what you're doing is you're spraying a light coat of oil on the inside of the cylinder, which is going to repel water condensate from being created on the inside of the engine, therefore saving your engine. So I'm just going to get it. That's it. You don't want to spray very much. It's best to use this nozzle, but this nozzle isn't working for me right now. You just want to get a nice, very thin coating throughout the whole cylinder. So, and again, this is called fogging the cylinders. Once you're done with that, you want to put the spark plug back and just retighten it. Now, whenever you do go to restart this machine, because of the oil in there, it will smoke just a little bit upon startup, just burning that oil. But this will help repel condensate from forming on the inside of your engine. So last but not least, you're going to want to disconnect your battery. So before you put your bolts back on, I always put the bolts either back with the battery or I put them back with the connections, just so that way I don't loosen them. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to wire brush both of these off, and then I'm going to give a light coat of grease on them so that way they don't corrode. Alternatively, some steel wool works pretty well as well. Just don't touch both of these at the same time with anything. once you get all that corrosion knocked off, they make oil specifically for battery terminals, but what I like to do is just get a dab of grease, you know, wheel bearing grease, electrical grease is the best. But you just want something that's gonna stick and it's gonna keep corrosion away. And you wanna apply it to both sides of every connection. And it doesn't take a lot, you just want a thin layer to keep the corrosion at bay.
You can go ahead and check your fluids at this time and just top them off if they're low, but there's really no reason to change your oil at this point. As oil sits, it oxidizes and degrades, so it'd be better to change it at the start of the cutting season. I'm also going to wait till the start of the cutting season to sharpen the blades and check the belts and everything, just because there's really no point in doing it right now.
Now I'm just going to put the bolts back in here. Again, you really don't want to lose them. But I just like to zip tie the ends together so that way I know exactly where they are and it's ready to go next time. Now last thing I'm going to do is check the tire pressure and make sure all the tires are aired up properly. You don't want them to go flat and sit all winter and develop those flat spots. That's a pretty common killer of tires. If you're pretty particular about how you store your machines, you know, you can either store it on jacks to where the tires are off the ground, or, you know, once a month you can go out there, push it a little bit so that the tire's not resting on the same spot. Me, I generally don't take that much thought into it, but I am going to check the PSIs on all the tires and make sure they're in the normal range. So guys, that's all I got for you. That's how to quickly winterize your riding lawnmower. And again, this will help you tremendously whenever it comes springtime to start your mower. Last thing, if you want to take that battery and take it somewhere and put it on a float charger, preferably somewhere that it won't be exposed to freezing temperatures, that'll enhance your battery life and will probably get you another season out of your battery. That's all I got for today. Thanks for watching.